Machiavelli was straightforward. It is much safer to be feared than loved. And you know why? Because when you live trying to please everyone, you give control of your life to others. You start depending on others' approval, and that makes you vulnerable. The constant desire to be liked turns you into an easy target. Manipulative people notice this from afar. They use your neediness to control you, blame you, and make you feel obligated to always say yes. And the more you try to please, the more they take advantage. You think you're being kind, but in reality, you're being used. In this video, I'm going to show you why this need to be accepted is a trap. You will understand how manipulators act and why Machiavelli warned us about this centuries ago. Stop trying to be liked, start being respected. Your freedom begins with this choice. And before we continue, check if the notification bell is already activated. That way you won't miss any content like this, direct, clear, and speaking the truth. From an early age, we are taught to be kind, pleasant, and smiling. The idea that we need to be liked by everyone is present at home, at school, and at work. But what no one tells you is the silent price you pay for it. When you live seeking approval, you end up adapting to the will of others, even when it goes against your principles. You say yes when you wanted to say no. You accept crumbs of attention, respect, or recognition just to maintain the image of a good, kind, easygoing person. And in that moment, you become manipulable. Machiavelli once said, "Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands. Everyone can see, few can feel." In other words, when you try to appear pleasant at all costs, you end up fooling, even yourself. You show an image that does not match your truth, and manipulators notice that quickly. They sense your fear of displeasing others, and they skillfully exploit it. They use compliments to gain your trust. Then they ask for favors, play with your guilt, with your insecurity, and make you feel responsible for their well-being. All because you want to continue being liked. The excessive desire to please is like an invisible collar. The more you try to be accepted, the more you move away from your true strength. And others notice that. They know you fear confrontation, fear conflict, fear appearing bad, and so they impose their will, cross boundaries, demand too much, because you allow it. Machiavelli understood human nature well. He knew that most people act out of self-interest, and those who want to be accepted by everyone usually become servants to everyone. They lose respect because they never say no. They never stand their ground. They never defend their space. And the world, unfortunately, does not respect those who do not respect themselves. Stop for a moment and reflect. How many times have you accepted uncomfortable situations just to avoid conflict? How many times have you swallowed your own opinion just to avoid seeming unpleasant? And how many times have you been used by people who knew exactly that? When you say yes to everything, you're not being kind, you're being fragile. And emotional fragility is what most attracts manipulators. They don't see your kindness as a virtue. They see it as an opportunity, and they take advantage. Machiavelli argued that the ideal ruler needed to inspire respect, and that applies to you too. It's not about spreading fear, but about showing that you have limits, that you're not willing to bend just to keep the peace. Because a peace that costs your dignity is a silent war against yourself. The first step to freeing yourself from this is realizing that you don't need to be liked by everyone. That is an illusion. There will always be someone who doesn't like you, no matter how much you try to please. And that's okay. Your value does not depend on the approval of others. When you stop seeking acceptance, you start building respect. Because people notice when you are authentic, when you are firm but fair, when you are not afraid to be who you are, and that is truly admirable. Machiavelli said, "The nature of peoples is very little constant. It is easy to convince them of something, but difficult to keep them convinced." In other words, trying to control what others think is a waste of time. Focus on controlling yourself, on strengthening your posture, your identity, your sense of worth. Those who learn to say no calmly gain immense freedom, because they no longer depend on others' approval to feel good. And when you reach that point, no manipulator can control you. So stop trying to be liked. Start being truthful. Start taking a stand. Start cultivating respect. As Machiavelli would say, it is better to be feared and respected than loved and used. You need to understand one fundamental thing that Machiavelli already pointed out. Manipulators do not go after those who are strong, firm, and secure. They seek out those who are afraid of being rejected, who want to be loved at any cost. Why? Because they know that those who fear rejection have an easy weakness to exploit. The manipulator knows how to use the weapon of guilt to control you. He will say things like, "After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me?" And you're trying to keep the peace, start to feel bad, thinking you owe him something. That is not love. It's pure manipulation. When was the moment you finally said no and truly felt free? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might open someone else's eyes today. Machiavelli warned that in the game of power, manipulators always take advantage of others' weaknesses, and the fear of rejection is the perfect one. Furthermore, the manipulator uses victimhood to turn the situation in their favor. He might say, "You hurt me by not meeting my expectations." This way, he puts you in the role of the guilty one, even if you did nothing wrong. And when you try to explain yourself, he turns that into more guilt for you, trapping you in a web that seems impossible to escape. The final test comes when he starts crossing your boundaries. If you give in once, even just to avoid conflict, he realizes that you lack firmness, that you are afraid. Machiavelli would say that posture is the key to authority. Without it, you become easy prey for manipulators. They don't need to be aggressive. Their power lies in subtlety, in the way they play with your emotions. The fear of rejection and the desire to be liked make you vulnerable to this emotional manipulation. Therefore, as Machiavelli would recommend, the secret lies in self-control, in not handing your power over to someone who only wants to use it for their advantage. If you understand this, you're already one step ahead, because deep down, as Machiavelli taught, power lies in being respected, not in being loved at all costs. And to gain respect, you must be firm, set clear boundaries, and not let the fear of rejection dictate your actions. Remember, manipulators can smell fear and weakness from afar. They are like predators hunting a wounded prey. Don't let your desire to be liked become your prison. Use Machiavelli's wisdom to protect your emotional freedom and regain your control. Knowing that this dynamic exists is already a major victory. Because the first step to winning any battle is understanding who your adversary is and where your weakness lies. And in the game of life, your greatest enemy may be this desire to please, to avoid rejection at all costs. So stay alert. Whenever someone tries to use guilt to control you, remember Machiavelli's lessons and hold your ground. Don't give in just to avoid momentary discomfort, because in the long run, that surrender is an invitation for more manipulation. Strengthen your inner self. Learn to say no without guilt. And understand that respect only exists when you respect yourself first. The desire to be liked can be a cruel trap, and Machiavelli knew that very well. Therefore, value your emotional freedom above all else. That is real power. And real power is not achieved by being loved by everyone, but by being respected by those who truly matter, yourself. If you've ever experienced something like this, hit the like button. It's the simplest way to say, "I got the message." It really helps me out. Niccolo Machiavelli was one of the first to deeply study power and its nuances, long before we had modern theories of leadership or psychology. He observed that in the game of politics and life, People who try to please everyone end up losing what matters most: respect. He clearly said, "He who seeks to please everyone pleases no one and loses respect." This phrase may seem simple, but it carries a profound truth that, if understood, can change your way of living. In politics, for example, leaders who try to be liked by everyone usually fail. They end up creating a weak image, lacking authority, and quickly lose support. Machiavelli explained that it is not better to be loved than feared, but that being respected is what guarantees stability and real power. This teaching also applies to personal life. In relationships, the same rule applies. If you are always trying to please your boss, your friends, or your family at any cost, without setting boundaries, you lose the natural authority that comes from being firm and consistent. People who only want to be liked end up being stepped on, ignored, and manipulated. That's because, in reality, pleasing everyone is impossible, and trying to do so becomes a trap that only wears down your self-esteem and personal power. Machiavelli did not defend cruelty or disrespect, but what he called strategy. He knew that to maintain power, one must have posture and make decisions that will not always please everyone. Being firm does not mean being cruel, but rather being aware of your value and the importance of being respected. In real life, a strategist knows that causing some discomfort in certain people may be necessary to maintain your authority and balance. Therefore, it is essential to understand that respecting yourself and setting limits is not selfishness. It is emotional intelligence. Machiavelli already knew that strong, firm leaders who know how to position themselves gain true respect, unlike superficial affection that cannot sustain relationships or positions. How many times have you heard truths like this? If it's rare, then subscribe, because here, this is constant. When you try to please everyone, you lose your authenticity and your decision-making power. The freedom you seek to be yourself is sacrificed to maintain an image of a good or nice person. Machiavelli taught that this is a fatal mistake in the game of power. Being respected, therefore, should be your main goal. This does not mean you should be rude or insensitive, but that you should know when to say no, when to set boundaries, and when to stand your ground, even if it causes temporary discomfort. Respect is the foundation for relationships and for success in any area of life. Think about it. Machiavelli lived in a time when politics was a brutal game, full of betrayals and manipulations. Even so, he defended the idea that real power comes from respect and firmness, not from the pursuit of being loved by all. This lesson remains valid today, perhaps even more important because we live in a world where the approval of others is at our fingertips, on social media and in daily pressures to please. So instead of trying to be liked at all costs, focus on being respected. Have the firmness that Machiavelli exalted as the foundation of power. And remember, being strategic is not being cruel, it is being wise. And that wisdom is what will protect you from manipulators who love those afraid of losing others' affection. Machiavelli, one of the greatest thinkers on power and strategy, left teachings that have transcended centuries and still apply to our lives today. He taught us that true power is closely tied to the posture we maintain in front of others, especially when we need to protect ourselves from those who try to manipulate our decisions or emotions. The first and most important lesson you must learn to shield yourself against manipulation is learn to say no firmly. Saying no doesn't have to be difficult, nor a reason to feel guilty or think you must give too many explanations. In fact, over-justifying your refusal may demonstrate insecurity, and those who want to manipulate you will quickly notice that vulnerability and take advantage of it. Setting clear boundaries in your life is essential. Machiavelli said that a wise ruler knows exactly where their limits are and does not cross them out of fear of others' opinions. This teaching applies to all of us. If you don't clearly define what you are willing to accept or not, you end up creating space for people to override your will, manipulate your feelings and decisions, and use you for their own interests. Understanding this is the first step to regaining control of your own life. True respect is not the result of being nice or trying to please everyone. Respect is earned by those who demonstrate firmness, coherence, and composure in the face of situations, even if it causes some discomfort. One of the most valuable pieces of advice is, speak less and observe more. This may seem simple, but it makes a huge difference. The more you talk, the more likely you are to reveal your weaknesses and hidden desires, and people who are watching for manipulation will notice this quickly. But when you observe, listen, and act calmly, you maintain a position of strength. Machiavelli said that the wise ruler is one who knows how to listen and analyze everything before acting. He does not act hastily, he acts at the right time and with the firmness needed to be respected. It is also essential not to over-explain your decisions. This doesn't mean you have to be cold or distant, but rather that your choices belong to you and don't need to be justified to gain the constant approval of others. Machiavelli already said that leaders who justify their actions too much end up showing weakness. Those who truly have power don't waste time trying to please or convince others because they know their value lies in their posture and actions, not in their words. Remember something very important. Those who truly respect you will stay by your side, even if you need to set limits and say no when necessary. On the other hand, those who only wanted to take advantage of your goodwill, your need to be liked, or your insecurity, will naturally drift away. This may seem difficult at first, but it's actually a sign that you're filtering your social circle to keep close only those who deserve and respect you. This strengthens you and prevents you from being used or manipulated. Shielding yourself from manipulation is a daily exercise involving self-awareness, courage to be firm, and a clear life strategy. It's not about being harsh or cruel, but about being wise and strategic. Machiavelli highlighted these ideas centuries ago, but they are still essential today for those who want to have control over their own life and destiny. When you understand and apply these principles, you stop being a victim of manipulation and start becoming the protagonist of your story. Have you ever understood what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved"? This phrase doesn't mean that you have to be cruel or try to be hated by those around you, not at all. What Machiavelli teaches is that you need to be strong, firm, and strategic in your life. Your strength comes from being clear, setting boundaries, and not giving up your dignity just to please others. It's about being respected, not being liked at any cost. Manipulators, who exist everywhere, feed on your need for approval. They love it when you're always trying to be liked, because that's like opening the door for them to come in and control you without you even noticing. When you live trying to please everyone, you become an easy prey for those who want to use your feelings against you. That's why the advice is simple. Cut that need at the root. Stop living for others. Start living for yourself, with respect and authenticity, being respected, being clear, and being free. These are the pillars that Machiavelli always emphasized in his teachings about power and control. He knew that people judge a lot by appearances and attitudes, and not so much by intentions or hidden feelings. As he himself said, "Men judge more by the eyes than by the heart." In other words, what matters is what you show, the posture you maintain, not what you feel inside. Showing firmness is the key to keeping your power. Showing neediness, insecurity, or fragility only gives power to manipulators. You don't need to be hated, but you do need to be strong enough not to be dominated by those who want to take advantage of you. Be someone who inspires respect, not someone who needs to be loved by everyone at any cost. That's the smartest and safest way to protect your life, your relationships, and your inner peace. Always remember what Machiavelli taught. Power is not about pleasing, it's about commanding the situation with wisdom and firmness. Learn to set your boundaries without fear of what others will think. When you understand that, the fear of rejection disappears and you become someone manipulators. Either respect or avoid. If this video truly made you reflect, leave your like to help the channel grow and spread these truths that many are afraid to say. If you're not subscribed yet, take a moment to subscribe, but no pressure, just so you can receive important notifications. Oh, and don't forget to activate the bell so you won't miss any valuable tips on power, manipulation, and how to keep your life under control. Share this video with someone who's trapped in the habit of trying too hard to please others. Help them see the danger and set themselves free. Here we speak the truth, raw, real, and strategic, just as Machiavelli taught centuries ago. See you in the next video, where we'll keep talking about power, strategy, and how to become the protagonist of your own story.